Hi there, I'm going to do a get ready with me using some of my favorite items. I'm also going to be showing you a lot of my favorite concoctions. I've been mixing a lot of things to get the right color or formula that I want, so I thought I'd share that with you today. I'm not naked. I have one of those towels with like Velcro on it. I just like having like a full blank canvas to work with because I do use bronzer and stuff on my neck and chest. So to start with skincare, I'm just going to use some face mist. And then some of the e.l.f. Hello Hydration face cream. Just kind of dig some out with the back of my fingernail, just like a little pea-size amount. I'm going to take my rings off because I hate putting on skincare with my rings on. I really like this cream, especially under makeup. I think it keeps me from getting oily, but it still makes my skin feel very balanced. Then I'm going to put on some sunscreen. This is the Beat Shield from Crave. I'm going to put a generous amount of this all over my face, neck, and chest. I use about that much. I try to use a generous amount. While I wait for that to sink in, I'm going to put a little bit of the Hylamide Sub-Q Eyes Advanced Serum on my under eyes. I don't wear this every day. I just wear it kind of like on special occasions. Then I am going to put a little bit of the NYX #everything lip balm on to hydrate my lips while I do the rest of my face. The first concoction I have is my foundation. I'll primarily be using the e.l.f. Flawless Finish Foundation. This is in the shade Light Ivory. This is, in my opinion, very light coverage. I can work it in with my fingers like 2 pumps and it still won't give me the coverage that I want. So what I do is I take the end of a pair of tweezers, I go in and grab a little bit of the Kevyn Aucoin Sensual Skin Enhancer in the shade SX03. This is a very concentrated pigment. It has a very slight olive undertone. This is the amount that I use just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of just how little of it I need. I also grab a little bit of this Hello Halo liquid highlighter from Wet n Wild, and it just helps add a really nice natural finish to the foundation concoction I create. And then I do a pump of the e.l.f. foundation. And I just mix it together so that it is nice and homogeneous. Is that the term? It ends up looking like that, and then I rub it in with my fingers, and then I'll go in with a beauty sponge. This is from Shop Miss A, and while it is very soft and bouncy, I find it very difficult to wash. I feel like it takes me much longer to get the makeup out and get the stains out versus the Beauty Blender. I feel like that only takes me like 30 seconds while this takes a couple minutes. And I'm just gonna go in and make sure it's blending better with my skin. Next, I'm going to put some of this Makeup Revolution Cut Crease Canvas in the shade Illustrate on my eyelids. I use this as a eyeshadow base. I have this one and I have the ABH primer, and I find that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes with the ABH primer, I do get creasing, versus this one I don't think I've ever gotten creasing with. And I'm just going to use my sponge to blend that out. Has anyone else had that issue with the ABH primer? Am I just not setting it with the right powder? Or am I using too much? Am I using not enough? Let me know what your experiences are with that product. My next step is blush and highlighter. I use a cream, and then later on I will use powders over top. But I'm going to use 2 of the Flower blushes. This one's in Bubbly, this one is in Pinched. I'm going to put a little bit on the back of my hand of each. I think together they make a really pretty color. And then I'm going to take some of this Lunch Money highlighter by Colourpop. And I just grab the back of a makeup brush and I pull a little bit off and put it onto the back of my hand. So you can see that's how much of each that I have on the back of my hand. It might look like a lot, but that Flower Beauty blush is actually quite subtle. And when I mix it in with the highlighter, it does lighten it up a little bit. So that's what it looks like. It's just a really pretty, like, nudie rose pink. I'm just going to take it on the back of this Beauty Blender, and I'm going to make sure I don't get it past a certain point on my cheek because I do have some more noticeable pores there, and if I do put a liquid highlight, if I put it anywhere near there, it really does accentuate the larger pores there, so I'm going to make sure to stop kind of like right underneath the middle of my pupil. I'm just going to bounce this on the very top of my cheekbones. And it's, I mean, it's subtle. It's not like the most blaring blush, but I think whenever I put the powder on top of it, the powder highlighter and powder blush on top, I think it does create a really nice natural flush. A little bit on my nose just to make it look a little bit more congruent. What am I doing with these words right now? So that was concoction number 2. My next step is going to be concealer. I'm going to use this one from Makeup Revolution. It's the full coverage concealer in the shade C7. And whenever I apply it at first, it doesn't seem like it will match my skin tone. It actually looks like it might be a bit dark. But once I blend it out, it actually looks really natural. And I do love the formula because it's creamy, it has enough coverage, but it's not thick. It might not look as dark on camera, but in person it does look like it is deeper than my skin tone, but then whenever I blend it out, it looks fine. So I'm going to use the non-blush side of my sponge and gently pat that in. Whatever I've left over on my sponge, I'll just put around the bottom of my nose. Then I have this Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush powder in the shade Light 1. I'm going to grab my Real Techniques setting brush and use that to set my under eyes. And then I'm going to use the ABH Brown Pomade to get started on my eyebrows. I will add another product later on, but this is to help shape them a little bit, and it'll make it easier for me to do my eyeshadow and my crease color placement and stuff if my brows are already mostly there. Alright, so the palette I'm bringing out for this Get Ready With Me is the Naked 3 palette from Urban Decay. I know people don't really talk about this palette that much anymore. I have been really wanting to buy the Making Mauves palette from Colourpop, and I'm trying to hold off. I'm not trying to buy a ton of eyeshadow palettes this year, and I already have 2 kind of pinky, purpley, mauve palettes in my collection already. I have this Wave on Taupe and I have this, so I thought to kind of scratch that itch for now, I'll use this one, and I have been dipping back into it recently and really liking it. So I do have my eyeshadow base on. I am going to grab some of Strange, which is that cream shade, and use a fluffy brush to set that. And I am going to curl my lashes just so I have a good idea of like what my eye is going to look like towards the end. I'm going to use this Colourpop E2 brush. It's just a fluffy brush. I'm going to go in with that Limit color, that mauve crease shade, and lightly start blending that as my transition. I have this Sigma E25 blending brush. I know it looks like it has product on it, but it's just stained. It's clean. And I'm going to go in with that deeper mauve shade, Nooner, and I'm going to more specifically place it right in my crease. I do find that these shades require quite a bit of building, but I just think that's because it's so close to my actual skin tone. I don't know of any mauves or light pinks that don't perform that way. I'm going to go back in with that transition brush and just better blend the edges between the two a little bit. I have an ABH Dual-Sided Brush from one of their palettes, and on one side of the more dense brush, I'm going to grab some of Buzz, wet my brush, and apply that to the first half of my lid. Then I'm gonna wipe off that brush, use the other side of that brush to grab Darkheart, which is the darkest shade in the palette. Going to also wet that, and then I'm gonna place that on the outer half of my lid. Turning around, adding a little bit more of that Buzz shade to help blend these better. Then going back in with Nooner and making sure that darker shade is blended in. And I'm gonna take that same brush that had Nooner, and I'm just going to very lightly run it underneath my lower lash line. So another mixture, another concoction I've been loving is my new favorite contour product. I recently used up my Kevyn contour powder in the shade Light, and I loved that powder. It was my favorite contour powder, but it's $44, and I just really didn't want to have to buy it again. So I looked in my collection to see if I had anything similar, and I realized I have some single eyeshadows that are very similar. Namely, these 2 shades here. I have Stone and Warm Taupe from Anastasia Beverly Hills. Warm Taupe is also in the Modern Renaissance palette, and I find that if you mix these together, it's very similar to what I got from the contour powder from Kevyn. And these are normally, I think, $12 a piece, but you can get them on sale for $6 a piece whenever ABH has half off single sales, which I think they have at least once or twice a year. And one of them is 1.7 grams, the other one is 1.3 grams. Together you get 3 grams of product for $12 versus 4 grams of product for $44 from the Kevyn powder. So I'm loving that I get a good deal, and if I want to use them separately on certain parts of my face, I have more control over that. I'm just super glad I figured this out before I bought another full size. It is a good product. I recommend trying it. It's just not something that I want to have to buy again. So I'm going to grab a little bit of Stone on this BH Cosmetics number 6 brush from their Marble collection. And I like to use Stone, the lighter shade, just underneath my cheekbones. And I find that with my face shape, it kind of like goes up like a C, if you can see that. I think it's just my face shape. So whenever I do my contour, I try to make it look like that, look like a C shape instead of just straight back. I obviously will blend that in better. I'm not just gonna leave it like that. And then I'm gonna put a little bit of that on either side of my nose. And then Warm Taupe, I actually like to use under my jawline. It is a little bit darker. So something I learned about kind of on accident is that I like to apply my contour powder underneath my face powder. I'm going to use a powder to set my foundation, but I like to do the contour and I also like to do the blush first, because then when I put the setting powder on top of it, it kind of diffuses it and makes it look a little bit more natural, and I'm less likely to have really sharp, harsh lines. So I have the Hourglass setting powder that I'm going to use, and then I'm going to apply it with the BH Cosmetics number 1 brush from their Marble collection. This is like very heavy and very soft. It's humongous. In order to better use the Hourglass packaging, because it is kind of difficult to use because you can't really pour it into the lid, I pour it into another container and then I use that to use less product, so I'm not going through it as quickly, because this is an expensive powder. And I also find that it can look quite heavy if you apply too much. So I'm going to use this brush, grab a little bit from the container, and then put it into the lid to better disperse it amongst the brush. And then I'm going to just kind of pat it into my skin. I forgot to apply blush. Oops. One blush I've really been loving with these Mauve looks is this one here from PYT Beauty. And it's just a really pretty, slightly cool toned, lighter blush. I'm just going to use my Cosmetics blush brush. Once again, concentrating kind of more on top of my cheekbone and then diffusing it and outward. Okay, now I'm gonna set my face with powder. So if you can see, I definitely do still have like a contour that's noticeable, but when I turn my head, my face doesn't look like dirty. Now for bronzer, I'm using the Real Techniques blush brush, and a bronzer I've really been enjoying is the Sun-Kissed bronzer from Cover FX. I'm actually not sure if they're discontinuing this or not. It is super light. So I'm gonna start by putting some up here by my hairline. If you can see, it just adds like a hint of warmth without being too dark. Some right under my cheekbones, right under my chin, and around my nose. And I feel like on camera it's barely noticeable, but I think it just adds a little bit more warmth back to my skin tone, but I'm not like significantly darker than my hands. One thing I noticed is I would always see on camera that my face and body was much darker than my hands, and I thought it was because I was using maybe foundation that was too dark or too much bronzer, I'm not sure. But then whenever I don't have any makeup on and I compare my face to my hands are still significantly lighter than what my face color is naturally. So I'm just gonna stop getting so worked up about them matching perfectly, because my hands are just freakishly pale and they have no redness to them whatsoever, and my face has a lot of redness in it, so it's never gonna match even when I'm not wearing any makeup. So I'm gonna be less harsh on myself about my face and hands not matching 100%. I just sprayed on a little bit of the Pure Miracle Mist. I like to put on setting spray and let it dry before I put on highlighter. I feel like it gives my skin a smoother surface. It's not as powdery, and I feel like the highlighter has much more of a chance to really shine. I am going to take a brow pencil and just define the outer tail of my brows a little bit more. But before I do that, I'm going to use this setting brush that I used to set my under eyes. It has a little bit of powder on it left, and I'm just going to kind of go over the ends. I find that if they're too wet from the pomade and the setting spray and just my natural oils from my skincare and stuff, the pencil won't stick as well. But if I add that tiny bit of powder just to kind of like dry it down a little, I don't know, the pencil will be much more likely to stick. And I won't have to keep going back and forth to get the pigment that I want. So this is the shade Taupe from NYX, and I'm just going to use this on the outer thirds just to make them look a little bit more defined. I don't know if you can really see a big difference on camera, but in person I think it just looks a little bit more completed. For highlighter, I'm going to be using the Becca Berlin Girl Glow highlighter. I just love this, especially when I wear more cool toned looks. And I'm going to really buff that into the skin right on top of the cheekbones. Really buffing it in, once again, making sure not to go too far so that I don't accentuate the pores right next to my nose. And I really do kind of buff it like all up in that area. Look at the difference. This is without. This is just setting spray. And then this is with, I love it so much. Now to make sure that my face like isn't too shiny all around, because I don't really like when I'm shiny right next to my nose or on my chin or like right in the middle of my forehead, I'm going to go in with the Balm's Sexy Mama. Just grab a little bit of powder just to like touch up those parts and make sure that they are matte. I almost forgot my inner corner highlight. I'm going to use that Dust shade. It's the lightest shimmer shade in the palette, and it is very crumbly, so I really only like using it on the inner corner. I'm going to curl my eyelashes one more time. Next, I will use the ABH Waterproof Cream Color in the shade Jet, along with an Essence liner brush, and I'm going to use that to create just a really thin black line on my upper lash line. I'm going to use this CoverGirl pencil liner in the shade Basic Black, and I'm just going to tight line. For mascara, I'm going to use the Essence Lash Princess. For lip product, I kind of want to keep it really light, so I'm going to use this Catrice lip balm. This is in the shade Beautiful Lips, and there's really not a lot left in there, so I'm just going to dig some out with my fingernail. And then I'm going to use this lip pencil from NYX in the shade Nude Suede Shoes, and I'm going to just add a little bit of definition to the outer portions of my lips just so that they're a little bit more symmetrical. So this is my look up close. I just really like pinks and grays. I think it's very complementary to my eye color and just my coloring in general. I love that Berlin Glow highlighter. It makes my skin look wet. I hope you like how my look turned out and getting a peek into how I mix and match things to kind of create my perfect color and formula, and just take a look at some of the things I've been loving lately. Let me know what some of your skincare and beauty favorites have been, but in the meantime, that's everything I have. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!